Today I'm going to be talking about the Khalistan movement in Canada. And if you are a Canadian, you need to watch this. Hello, I am a global nationalist. I support nationalism in my country, India, and in all countries around the globe. Today I'm going to be talking about nationalism in a country outside South Asia. The country for today is Canada. This week, the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused India of somehow being involved or even responsible of a killing of a Sikh terrorist, or as they call a Sikh activist leader in Canada. And I just want to discuss the that, but more than that, I want to talk about the Khalistan movement and how it has spread and grown throughout Canada in the last 40 years, so that Canadians who are just learning about this issue can have some basic understanding and know how it affects them. So, yeah, let's get started. Khalistanis in Canada. On the left is the Khalistan flag, and on the right, obviously, is a Canadian flag. Khalistan is basically a movement to create a Sikh nation in India, Punjab. Also, it basically wants to create the original territory of the previous Sikh empire, which also included Pakistan, modern day Pakistan, which is uh, in during partition was made out of divided Punjab. But Khalistanis don't advocate for the Pakistan province of Punjab to become a part of their nation. They only talk about the Indian Punjab. The reason for this is because Khalistan is a movement that is funded and propagated by Pakistan's intelligence services, and not entirely. It is also comes from within a radical section of the Sikh community, but it is definitely propped up by Pakistan. Now, uh, this movement began in the 70s and was a violent movement led by a man named uh, Bhindran Wale, who was a Sikh separatist, and not just him, but also other Khalistani leaders and terrorists. He was, and thousands of people died, mainly non-Sikhs, such as Hindus, but also Sikhs that opposed Khalistan. Why it's relevant for Canada is because several Khalistanis immigrated to Canada and established a network there and continue to support Khalistan movement and its violent activities within India. Before I go forward, I want to make sure that this video has nothing to do with the Sikh religion. It is not an attempt to portray the Sikh people as terrorists or anti-Indians. They are not. They are ordinary Indians, just like every other Indians. Just that some of them are against the country and are, frankly, traitors and are violent. And yeah, that's only those people I'm criticizing, not the entire community. First, start with Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. He was the Prime Minister of Canada from the 70s to the 80s. Under him, uh, the Khalistan movement in Canada really began. In 1974, India conducted a nuclear bomb test where a nuclear explosion. It was a peaceful nuclear explosion, not meant for against any other country. It wasn't aimed at any other country. and it was done using nuclear material given by Canada from one of its companies. And Pierre Trudeau felt that this was a violation of an agreement and so suspended uh, any nuclear relations with India and downgraded its their ties with India. However, a report by the U.S. government in the 1970s, which was later declassified in the 21st century, said that the use of the nuclear material for peaceful explosions was never forbidden in the agreement. So I think that is enough evidence to show that India did not commit an illegal act, although it could be. Yeah. So this shows that relations with India were seen negatively during his term, even without reference to Khalistan. Dalwinder Singh Parmar, he was a Khalistani terrorist from India who had immigrated to Canada, and India had asked Canada to extradite him, but the Canadian Prime Minister refused. And let's see what he did. Air India Flight 182 was bombed by this man. Another flight in Japan, Air India flight, was also meant to be bombed, but the bomb detonated before it could get into the plane through a suitcase. And in this Air India flight, more than 300 passengers died, majority of whom were Canadian citizens, and some were American, and the others were Indian citizens. It was done by this man, Palvinder Singh, Dalvinder Singh Palmer. So goes to show how Pierre Trudeau failed to keep Canadians safe by tolerating Khalistani terrorists. Although, uh, and the trial for these terrorists only began 20 years later in 2006, and only one person who was charged was eventually convicted. Everyone else was acquitted. So it shows that there's a lot of pressure by Khalistani groups against the Canadian government to not act against them. And let's see how another prime minister dealt with Khalistanis. I'm talking about Prime Minister Stephen Harper. He was the Prime Minister of Canada from the late 2000s till to 2015. He condemned violence in the name of Khalistan very unequivocally. He was in power when Manmohan Singh was in power in India, and having a Sikh as prime minister made it difficult for Khalistanis to portray India as an anti-Sikh country. And so I guess that made it easier for Prime Minister Harper to condemn them, their violence, although he did not deny them their right to express their political views to have a homeland in India. But he was stronger on them. He didn't ignore their violence. And even when Modi was elected, Modi had good relations with him. Now on to the man of the moment, Justin Trudeau. During his term, Khalistanis have attacked an Indian embassy in Canada. This was this year. Here you can see Khalistanis attacking the embassy and taking down the Indian flag, often called the tricolor or the Tiranga in India, and replacing it with the Khalistani flag. This is very insulting and puts lives of Indian diplomats in danger. And although Canada's government did condemn it, uh, so far nobody has been punished for this attack, which has disappointed India. His Liberal Party does not have a majority in the parliament, and he is allied with the New Democratic Party. The leader of the new NDP is Jagmeet Singh. He is allied with Trudeau, and Jagmeet Singh does support Khalistan, but implicitly, not expressly. He has been at conferences with Khalistanis who have advocated for violence against the Indian state and Indian government, where he has not condemned violence against the Indian government to achieve Khalistan. He has not condemned the Khalistani movement. And together, they have accused the Indian government of killing Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who, according to them, is just a Sikh activist in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. However, India views him as a Khalistani terrorist because he is charged with a bomb blast in a theater in 2007. That uh, by working with the United States, they have got some uh, signals, human signals, that show that Indian diplomats were somehow connected to the killing, but they've just got intelligence by basically spying on Indian diplomats in Canada. But they've not said what that intelligence says, what the evidence is. It's still very much based on hearsay. What does this show? It shows that Canada has had a Khalistan problem for a long time, since the 1980s, maybe the 70s as well, and that it started with Pierre Trudeau damaging relations with India. He should have really just ignored the nuclear blast. I know it's uncomfortable, but he need to understand that India has problems with two of its neighbors, Pakistan and China, and so it needed to be able to defend itself, and that's why it had to work on becoming a nuclear power. So he should have just ignored India, and especially since the agreement didn't forbid the use of nuclear material for peaceful nuclear explosions. And he really should have acted on India's request to deport that Khalistani terrorist. And if he did, the Air India flight being bombed would not have happened. And since then, Canada's immigration from India has grown, and many of these people are from Punjab, and few, not majority of few, are Khalistani separatists, and Canada has failed to prevent them from getting into Canada. Even this late man, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, was an illegal immigrant to Canada who only got citizenship more than 10 years after he first entered Canada on an illegal passport. So this shows that Canada needs to tighten its immigration laws to prevent people with criminal and terrorist backgrounds from entering their country. And yeah, I don't think he should have made this comment about India being involved with his killing, because there's still no evidence of that. He's not shown the intelligence from the Indian diplomats. He's not shown how this Indian government uh, conducted the killing, what was or the plan, and any other specific details that he can share without uh, compromising Indian or Canadian intelligence sources. So yeah, it's still difficult for me to believe him. He needs to provide more solid proof. But the fact is that he has allowed Khalistani terrorists to become more emboldened in Canada. This is why they're attacking Indian embassies. After this, Mr. Niger was killed. He was killed by assailants outside of his own Gurdwara in Vancouver, masked assailants who have not been arrested. After that, Khalistanis raised posters around the Indian embassy showing the pictures of several Indian diplomats and calling for their assassination, doxing them, etc. So yeah, his mollycoddling of Khalistanis has really hurt India and threatened India, and so this has made the Indian government view his government in a hostile manner, and that's not good for Canada. Canada should not be viewed by India as a safe haven for anti-India terrorists, because then India will treat Canada like the only other country it accuses of harboring terrorists, which is Pakistan. And India does not treat Pakistan well, and Canadians would not like India to treat Canada the way it treats Pakistan. That's all I wanted to say. Please share your thoughts in the comment section. If you want to see other videos about nationalism outside South Asia, click here. If you want to see my previous video, click here. If you want to see the sources I use for this video, click the link in the description below. Thank you for watching. Vande Mataram.